Think about a time when someone said something about some aspect of your identity that made you feel insulted or slighted. Even if they didn't intend it, you probably experienced a microaggression.
A microaggression is something that someone says to someone else without knowing that it may be offensive.
It hurts. So that's how I know it's a microaggression, because it feels disrespectful.
And it's not like outright racism, but it's something that is like almost unconscious in the way that you view people.
Most microaggressions are subtle and indirect, but they occur frequently in the daily interactions of members of historically underrepresented groups. And most often, people who commit microaggressions think of themselves as well-intentioned, non-racist, non-sexist people. They do not realize that the underlying messages communicated by their actions or comments are hurtful to other people.
One of my friends asked if my parents had their papers. I had a science teacher, a physics teacher, and he told me that I was the smartest black girl in his class.
I've been asked if I understood what they were talking about, or like, do you need any translation and stuff just based on my name?
Like, I'm not the spokesperson for the whole black community, but that's a microaggression I do experience a lot. Like, they want the black perspective. And I'm usually the only black girl in the class. So it's like, okay, what's your take on this?
Oftentimes I get asked, like, do you know how to speak your native language? And when I answer I do, it's just like, they're like, okay, well, what does chinchao mean?
There are 3 types of microaggressions: microassaults, microinsults, and microinvalidations. A microassault is similar to what we think of as overt discrimination. In the case of microassaults, those acts are intentional.
I was a server for a long time, and if anyone else was, you know this. In the back of the kitchen, like when someone gets a table of, like, say, Indian people, I hope this is PC, I don't know all the terms, but like Indian people or black people or anyone, they'd be like, who wants that table? I don't want it, they're not gonna tip. And my heart would break every time.
I used to be a server too, and I hated it because I was like the only person of any type of race other than white. I remember coming in and they'd be like, oh, Danielle, you get that table of raccoons, and I was like, what? And they were like, yeah. And then I would go and I'm like, they're black people, and I was like, wait, is that what you call black people? You call them raccoons?
A microassault can be the deliberate posting of swastikas, Confederate flags, racial slurs or epitaphs that are left on a blackboard in a classroom.
I work as a research assistant, and so a while ago, one of the new RAs, when I was a few months into it, came up to me and just mentioned that even though we'd known each other for months at that point, you're the least scary black guy I've ever met. In the way that I dress, the way that I talk, the way that I speak, I've kind of tailored that over the course of my education to be non-threatening.
I'll literally have like my keys in my hand, like they're always with me, and I'll just like jingle them as I'm walking so that they know that I know that I'm there, so that we both know that I'm right here and I'm not gonna try and do anything to be stupid. But on that note, there's also the stigma that like we're aggressive and intimidating.
It's sad you have to make sure you let people know you're not a threat. And that's jacked up.
One of my friends commented to me, he said, I don't really even think you're black, you're, and I was like, what? I was like, what do you mean? He's like, you're smart, you do your work, yes, you're athletic, but you do your work, you're smart. So I don't really know if you're black. I was like, I didn't understand. It made me question who I was and if I was still a part of the culture.
And that's an example of micro-invalidation and a micro-insult. And I'm going to talk about those a little bit more. A micro-insult is a comment that communicates the demographic group is not respected, that person is a slight exception to the stereotype. It's an insult, even though the perpetrator thinks he has just rendered a compliment.
Well, here at UNT, I've heard, you're so pretty for a black girl. I feel like it discounts me as a person, and then I feel like it discounts my race. I feel like you can be pretty just because you're a woman, or, or all black women are beautiful, all people of color are beautiful. just the same as people that are not people of color. So for them to make that specific statement, that's what I'm like, what in you made you say that to me? As if it were a compliment.
So another type of micro insult is when students in the classroom are dismissed or treated almost as if they're invisible. For instance, in some of our sciences or engineering classes, there are few women, and professors often don't call on those women.
I had one instance in a statistics-based class where we were discussing something bell curve related, and he presented a question, and I don't remember exactly what the answer was, but I answered it, and he kind of doubted me, and he very condescendingly was just like, oh, okay, well, I mean, like, this is the best answer, but I guess your answer could be right. You know what, we'll ask, it was a grad student. He was like, you know what, we'll ask Dr. So-and-so and see what he thinks the best answer is. And there was no apology or anything. He was just like, oh yeah, Dr. So-and-so said that, yeah, that was actually a really acceptable answer. And I was just like, okay. What else is he gonna doubt me on, and when else am I gonna be called out in front of 70 other people, you know, and have a weird exchange that makes the whole room quiet? Like,
one of my science classes, my teacher had asked what I wanted to do, and I told the teacher that I wanted to be a psychiatrist, and immediately they're like, that's too hard for you, maybe you should try a different field, or have you ever thought about being a nurse practitioner? Nurse practitioners in psychiatry make pretty well, they make a lot of money too. Have you thought about that? Like, why go to med school?
Genuinely, sometimes somebody might feel like they can't make it, you know, and then when you continue to tell them that, it does hurt, you know.
I've had a lot of professors tell me to my face that they were surprised that I was as good as a student as I was, and that I paid attention in class and actually participated. And when I asked why, they said, well, you know, you just come off as a troublemaker. You have all these piercings and short hair as a girl and tattoos, and we just naturally assumed that you weren't really going to be any good.
Another type of micro insult is when a professor says to a student, wow, you speak really good English. The message is, the professor thinks I don't really belong here, or that I'm not really American. Of course I speak good English. I was born in the United States. But the professor sees a Latina or an Asian and makes the assumption that that person is foreign, or at least that is what the target hears. What is the underlying message when somebody asks if you're legal?
That you don't belong to this country.
That you don't belong, that's right.
We were walking into the gym once, and I was a guest, so I had to hand the person my ID. And he was looking at my name and everything. He's like, what are you? And I was like, well, what are you asking? He's like, what nationality are you? I was like, okay, I'm Lebanese, I'm Arab.
He's like, you got one of those that blow things up, are you? No offense, though. What kind of crazy stuff do you ask someone? You get what I'm saying?
And I was just really surprised. Like, it totally blew my mind that someone would think that.
The assumptions I get the most is that I'm very academic and that I'm very good at math. When they assume stuff like that, it makes me feel like they're taking the individual out of who I am and just assuming that all the people who look like me act like me, and that kind of makes me feel lesser of what I can do.
The teacher was asking if someone could translate something in Spanish, because he was giving an example, and he needed this one word to be translated in Spanish. And he just stared at me specifically when he was asking, and I knew we were making eye contact, because after, I just stayed quiet, because I was like, I'm pretty sure there's other people in this class that know Spanish, but he just kept staring at me. And at some point, the rest of the class turned to look at me, waiting for a response. And I was like, I'm not gonna give you guys an answer. This is not okay.
Our teacher pulled me aside because they were doing something for Christmas, like Toys for Tots or something. And he had this bicycle. They had a bicycle they were gonna give to the kids, and he came up to me and was like, hey, I need to switch out the seats on this bike, and it seems like somebody like you would know how to do that. So if you could just change it out for me, that'd be great. And so I was like, oh, okay, sure, you know, not really thinking much of it. And then later on, I kind of thought to myself, that's odd. Why would he assume that I knew personally how to switch, you know, a bike seat? Just, you know, so I thought that was an odd kind of, maybe a micro insult on the fact that he assumed just because maybe I'm Latino that I'm good with my hands or something like that.
A micro-invalidation is a comment or action that dismisses the experiences of historically disadvantaged group members. Micro-invalidations can happen when, for instance, when a student is lamenting that she wishes there were more Latina faculty, for instance, and the students in the class start rolling their eyes or, oh, come on, get over it, and the professor goes along with the students instead of with the person who made the lament. Another type of micro-invalidation, one that we hear a lot about today, is being colorblind. When people say, I don't notice you're black, I don't notice you're Latina, I don't see color. What does that mean? How do you interpret that? What are people saying when they say, I don't notice your race, I don't see color? How do you interpret that?
They're just trying to say that they're not racist. But they don't look at that side of you and they just want to validate you as a person, but it comes off wrong because it's like your race is very much who you are as an individual.
In a lot of my mini classes, I have to do writings, and it's just, professors seem to be like, don't want to hurt my feelings because I'm an international student, so my English is not that good, especially with my writing. So they let me go easy, I just feel like they have different expectations for international student and just American students. And like a lot of feedback that I get from like my writings is just like not very meaningful, because I just feel like they just try not to hurt my feelings, try to go easy on me. But then by doing that, I just feel like it takes toll on my like development, like my learning, my writing, and art stuff.
So what do you do if you are not the person who commits the microaggression as the professor? What if someone else in the classroom commits it?
What I usually do is like, I name it. When I hear it in the room, a microaggression that a student says, it may not be directed to a particular student, but there are probably students in the room who will feel as if they have been microaggressed against. I will name that. I think we've just had a difficult comment made that not everybody's comfortable with. What are people feeling in the room right now? Did anyone feel uncomfortable with that? And then if there's silence, which there oftentimes is because people aren't comfortable about calling each other and things, I will talk about what it is that I heard. I will model the behavior of instigating a difficult dialogue. And usually once I do that, then people will come back.
The impact on students that can be harmful is that it creates an uncomfortable environment or climate. It can be very stressful. Some of the research shows that it can affect people's health because of the stress. But I think one of the big things is that you just don't feel like you belong or are included. And especially when we're trying to create a campus where diversity is valued and where everybody feels included, they get in the way of that goal.
Just recently, I caught myself making one, and as soon as the words came out of my mouth, I realized that I had made this exact mistake that I was just talking about, like overgeneralizing to an entire group or class of people. And I saw tears well up in her eyes. And I said, I'm so sorry. I'm absolutely positive that I have said something to hurt you. And I think I know why. But I would really like to hear from your perspective what just happened here.
So common microaggressions committed by faculty in the classroom include the following: mispronouncing students' names after they have repeatedly corrected you, referring to students by the wrong pronouns, calling on men while ignoring women in class discussions, or calling only on white students and ignoring the students of color in your classroom, scheduling tests or projects during religious or cultural holidays. Be aware of assigning projects that disregards socioeconomic status. Be aware of using heterosexist examples in class. When professors give heteronormative examples, atoms attract like males and females, or there's an assumption of bring your girlfriend or bring your boyfriend, an assumption that you're heterosexual. We make an assumption that heterosexuals are the normal people.
One of the biggest things is pronouns when it comes to transgendered people, individuals, because sometimes they'll tell you, hey, I prefer these pronouns, and when a person doesn't choose to go by, female pronouns or male pronouns, it invalidates their person.
Like a little thing with the misgendering thing, everyone messes up. It's okay. If you do misgender like me or someone else that's trans, or even someone that's cis, just like apologize and move on. Don't make the apology about yourself, but just like say, oh, I'm sorry, correct yourself, and then move on. Don't make it a constant thing though, because we'll pick up on that. So yeah, just a little side note on that.
As a faculty member, you are responsible for the climate in that classroom. You, the professor, the faculty member, are responsible for every single person's sense of belonging in that classroom. You are responsible for every person's opportunity to learn.
I think in a broader spectrum, we'd have to get to know each other or just not make assumptions. People don't realize that we are a lot more alike than we are different.
People say that for other people, like you're so black or you're so Mexican, you're so Asian. And to me, that takes away from who I am as a person, even though it groups and stereotypes me with other people, and I don't like when people do that.
It makes you feel like you shouldn't be who you are. It makes you feel like they're basically trying to tell you that you should be doing something else. Like they're not able to accept you for the person that you are and the person you're trying to show them that you are. Instead, they're just telling you like, oh, that's not right. That's not a good fit. And I mean, nobody wants to feel that way. Everybody wants to feel, accepted for who they are, no matter, what situation they're put in.